Madam President.
The Democratic leader is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. First, let me thank all of my colleagues who were here till late last night and made such persuasive arguments as to why the new Supreme Court justice, who matters so much to the American people, to their health care, to the working people's rights, to women's rights, to preserving the right to choose, to making sure we have a good green planet, to LGBTQ rights. They did an eloquent job. And I hope America was listening, because this nomination matters. It matters to the average daily lives of average Americans. And last night, by holding the floor till the late hours, Democrats made really strong arguments. So I thank my colleagues for doing that. Now, for the third day in a row, Leader McConnell has come to the floor and completely ignored the principle, quote unquote, he established in 2016. When mere hours after Justice Scalia passed away, Leader McConnell said that the American people should have a voice in the selection of their next Supreme Court justice. His words, the American people should have a voice in the selection of their next Supreme Court justice, referring to the upcoming election. But that election was more than 8 months away. We are now only 42 days away. But the so-called McConnell rule, the supposed principle that the American people deserve a voice in the selection of a Supreme Court justice, hasn't come up. The Republican leader can't mention it. No wonder he never mentions it, and he sticks to just diversionary, irrelevant remarks in his speeches on the floor, instead of addressing the main issue, why he said one thing in 2016 and a different thing now. Instead, the Senate is forced to suffer these tortured explanations and misleading precedents. At a press conference yesterday, here's how the Republican leader described the Senate role in confirming Supreme Court justices. He actually said, quote, "We have an obligation under the Constitution to consider a Supreme Court justice, should we choose to take advantage of it." Did you catch that? Did you catch that, Madam President? It's an obligation, but only if the Republican leader chooses to take advantage of it. So I see, when there's a Democratic president, it's one of those obligations you don't have to take advantage of. But when there's a Republican president, it's a solemn constitutional duty. Are we really supposed to swallow the argument that when the Senate and the President are of the opposite party, one rule applies, but when they're of the same party, a different rule applies? I didn't hear that right after Scalia died, when Leader McConnell explained why he was holding it up. So this idea that when it's of one party, one rule applies, and another party, a different rule applies, we have a term for that. It's called a double standard. And if the leader really wants to discuss precedent, real precedent, not fiction, we can dispatch with that conversation in about 30 seconds. So, Madam President, I have a parliamentary inquiry for the chair. Is there a Senate precedent for confirming a Supreme Court nominee between July and Election Day in a presidential year?
Materials from the offices of the Secretary of the Senate do not show such a precedent.
Thank you, Madam President. July is long gone. August is over. We're now at the end of September. As you just heard, not from the Democratic leader, but from the records in the Senate as spoken by the chair, there is no precedent for confirming a Supreme Court justice between July and Election Day. The Republican leader can come up with arguments that twist things, that jump through hoops, but it doesn't gainsay no precedent for any Supreme Court nominee being confirmed between July and Election Day. So, as you know, July is gone, August is over, we're now at the end of September, 6 weeks before an election in which some people have already begun to vote. Simply, my Republican friends have no ground on which to stand, none. No logic to excuse completely flipping their position 4 years apart under the same circumstances. No justification for the senators who said on the record they would, quote, say the same thing if a Republican president were in office. Say the same thing if a Republican president were in office. They said then, but it doesn't apply now, that we have a Republican president in office. No defense for the senator who said, precedent set, precedent set. I'm sure come 2020 you'll remind me of that, unquote. No place to hide for the senator who said, quote, you can say that I said it. Let the next president decide. Hold this tape. I want you to use my words against me, unquote. Why are Senate Republicans going to such extreme lengths to ram through a justice mere weeks before an election, making a complete mockery of their previous principle? Why are they committing a power grab so egregious that it risks shedding the last vestiges of trust that remain between our two parties? For what? Because this is the only way for Republicans to achieve their radical right-wing agenda. An agenda so far away from where average Americans think, even average Republicans, that they wouldn't dare bring such things on the floor of the Senate. Unable to thrust comically unpopular positions on the American people through Congress, they have to try through the courts, a cynical strategy that dates back to the 1950s. Republicans are sick and tired, for instance, of this annoying law, the Affordable Care Act, and that it keeps providing health to millions of Americans. They tried to repeal it in the House just about 1 million times, and they tried here too in the Senate, but failed by 1 vote. So now they've taken it to the courts. President Trump and Republican attorneys general are suing right now to eliminate the entire law, including protections for up to 130 million Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, President Trump is meeting with those Republican attorneys general at the White House today, this afternoon. Less than a week after Justice Ginsburg's passing, the president is meeting with the leaders of the Republican lawsuit against our health care law. Ostensibly, it's about how social media companies are biased against conservatives. But who wants to bet that the health care lawsuit doesn't come up? I'd like for someone to ask them that. If he cared about health care of the American people, President Trump himself would ask the AGs to withdraw their lawsuit. I'm calling on him to do it right now. I doubt he will, given his record, given his lack of concern for American people's health care, but he should. But unfortunately, let's remember, President Trump already told the American people his goal. He said, quote, my judicial appointments will do the right thing, unlike Bush's appointment, John Roberts, on Obamacare. And he's about to make a Supreme Court pick while there's an ongoing lawsuit that seeks to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. Hear that, America? The health care law you want, the health care law you need, the health care law that protects you against overreaching insurance companies who won't give you insurance when you have a pre-existing condition. President Trump has said he will appoint a nominee who will undo it, and we know he said it because of what he said about Justice Roberts when Justice Roberts opposed his view on health care. Guess when the case is being heard in the Supreme Court, America? November 10th, a week after the election. Is that why Senate Republicans are in such a rush to get a new right-wing justice confirmed before the election, so that Supreme Court can do what they failed to do here in the Senate, repeal this health care law which protects so many Americans? Leader McConnell slammed on the brakes while tens of thousands of Americans died from COVID. And now he's slamming his foot on the gas to approve a Supreme Court justice who could rip away Americans' health care in the middle of a pandemic. Shame, shame. For 4 months, the Republican majority delayed a COVID relief package while the nation suffered. But 1 hour after the news of Justice Ginsburg's passing broke, Leader McConnell said, "Batten down the hatches, we're full steam ahead," on confirming another right-wing justice. A justice who could undo Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy, who could rip away health care from millions of American families, who could decide there is no more right to choose for millions of American women. Roe v. Wade hangs in the balance here. Who would crush unions for millions of American workers, who would make it harder to vote for millions of African Americans, who could end marriage equality for millions of LGBTQ Americans like my daughter and her wife, who looked at each other this weekend and wondered, is our marriage on the line? Average Americans are thinking, what are they going to lose with this new hard-right, special interest-dominated Supreme Court if our Republican friends have their wish, which we're going to fight every step of the way. The stakes of this election, the stakes of this vacancy, concern no less than the future fundamental rights of the American people. My friends on the other side will tell you they're being hysterical, that they actually support protections for Americans with pre-existing conditions. That's hysterical. Ask the mother whose son or daughter has cancer and can't get insurance and watches their child suffer. That's not being hysterical. That's doing what we're supposed to do, not what the folks on the other side are doing, rushing through a justice who, in a very strong likelihood, if that justice gets approved, will rip health care away from the American people. America, you have to ask yourselves, if Republicans will completely reverse themselves on a major principle whenever it suits them, what can you trust them on? How can you take their word seriously? Republicans have praised the legacy of Justice Ginsburg with flowery words about her impact. But in the resolution I offered yesterday, they even didn't want to acknowledge her dying wish that she not be replaced until the next president is installed. And President Trump had the gall, the temerity, the baseness to suggest that her dying words were not issued by her. How low can a president go? And now, Senate Republicans are working with every fiber of their being to confirm a justice, despite her last wish, in contradiction to her dying most firmest wish, who will reverse her legacy. This is not speculation. This is not hyperbole. President Trump has said again and again and again that he wants the Supreme Court to terminate the health care law. He made it clear he has a litmus test. Any Trump nominee must want to strike down Roe v. Wade. Republicans should, for once, be straight with the American people. They are fighting to reverse Judge Ginsburg's legacy, not honor it. All their speeches of praise run totally hollow and are belied by their actions. America, you can't trust them at their word. You can't trust them to protect your health care. And you definitely can't trust this Senate Republican majority to protect you. On another matter, the Johnson report. While the rest of the country was busy fighting COVID, Senate Republicans have been abusing the power of the Senate to conduct opposition research for President Trump's campaign. This morning, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee released his report, which reads as if Putin wrote it, not United States senators. The bogus narrative of this report, peddled by a Russian disinformation campaign, was disproved by every witness who testified. Despite their zeal to smear President Biden and his family, Senate Republicans found no evidence to support the conspiracy theories pushed by Putin's intelligence agents. Senators Grassley and Johnson should reimburse taxpayers for the money they wasted. And this entire disgraceful affair and the Johnson report should be relegated to the dustbin of history. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.